you're muted.
Russ, did you want to speak? Russ, can you hear us? No.
That seems problematic.
Which is probably why he has his hand up.
Could there be another device he has so he can call in for the audio portion?
Once we open public hearing, after if we see that Russ can get, there is someone with their hand raised after we open public. We can message him, right, Justin? Okay. See where to. Yeah, I don't see where to message on him. Okay.
Did you click on his icon in the participant list?
Or, yeah.
I have pin, spotlight, make host, rename, allow, put on hold, remove. Yeah, there's nothing for commenting.
Oh, I guess the messaging is turned off.
Okay.
Yeah. It was for us when we were there, I'm sure, because they didn't want us to privately message each other.
That was right. I think council had us turn it off. Okay. I think Dustin's gonna call him, so maybe we'll wait a moment. He is a panelist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we still can't message in the, that's the problem.
Yeah, we had turned off messaging.
The people that I know that are up there can hear us, so.
They can hear us? Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Taylor says that someone that he has on can hear us. Okay. There is someone with who's the 818 number? Is that someone with you, Taylor? Okay. There's Stacy and Sumner.
I apologize for the interruption. I don't know if anybody can hear me. I can't hear any of the proceedings going on.
We can hear you, Russ.
You change the camera angle so you can let them know that we can. We gave a bunch of thumbs up, but we're so tiny.
We're so. I can do it on there.
You want to write your phone number on a piece of paper and say, call me.
I have done that. I have done that before. Here we go.
I think he might be talking with
Talking to
Dustin maybe right now.
And our video setup has improved dramatically.
Yes. Oh,
Actually, just
yeah.
want to sign out and call back in.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like it's.
he's talking to somebody now. I'm wondering if it's,
Dustin or not.
yeah.
It's like a reset button. Sure.
And you thought this was going to be a quick.
Yeah. So procedurally, with somebody with a raised hand, since we've closed the public comment period, I could take their comment if it was related to the public hearing portion of the,
Only during the public hearing.
Only during
only
the-
after Elaine has done her presentation of a
Then
review.
we'll open the public
Right,
hearing.
right.
And then they can speak and then they can't afterwards. The only time would be is if they are the applicant.
I see. So
But I would
by
have
somebody
them
raising
as-
their hand after the public comment period,
then
but is that what just happened? When you mentioned,
someone had their hand raised that they could have accidentally, they have
I see.
lowered it
Okay.
now.
Thanks for the clarification.
Might have had it raised in anticipation of the public hearing.
Yeah, waiting.
I see.
That's what,
We were-
that's what
we
I'm
were just about to
assuming.
open.
Or, hey, your council seems to be muted.
Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we have counsel here, but I think you can take a comment out of order if you so choose to. We prefer, I remember I was told not to, but I was told we could if it was necessary, like somebody had to leave.
Yeah, at our training, we were told, I forget who did our, it wasn't Keith.
No, it was, is his name Pete? The ethics training?
Yeah, they told us it was up to our discretion to.
Mhm, yeah.
Connecting to
depending on-
audio. Can you hear us now? No.
It's on his, no. Yeah.
It's because he's got a Brazil World Cup banner in he's brought he's brought the developing country technology with him. Do you see it?
So I can't resend it because I'm not signed into email or anything like that.
Well, I think there's go to participants
Mhm,
and the little arrow
mhm.
is it invite. And you don't have any email.
Mm-mm, I don't have email.
Copy invitation.
Oh, no, it's been there. I know, but I mean.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's a fairly recent addition.
Yeah, it's.
Did he try signing out and signing back in?
Can you kick him out?
Like, did somebody get him on the phone?
Yeah, Justin's on the phone. Sounds like. Really?
Out of meeting, you'd have to call back. in.
Remove them.
Yep, do it.
Or just remove
Boot
it.
him.
Goodbye. I wonder if that's him. 916 number, because he just came on. That's
Yeah,
new.
That's a
Yeah.
Sacramento number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allow him to talk and we can talk to him.
Is the 916 number our council?
Russ, are you on?
It's muted.
You're muted if you're on.
And ask him to unmute.
It won't let me unmute him.
You can ask him. Although it's probably
Ah,
there we go.
Hi, it's Russ. Can you hear me?
wonderful.
Hi, Russ. Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay,
Fantastic.
great.
Do
Thank
Do you
you.
want to let him know we booted him out of the video. So if he wants to sign back into the video, that's a possibility as well.
I don't know if you heard Elaine, I did remove you from the video, and so now you're on just as dialing in on your phone. I don't know if you want to try to re-sign in and see if it connects, or if you just want to stay on as you are now.
Well, I'll sign in and try to make sure that I don't have double microphones going.
Okay,
Okay. Please proceed. Don't wait on me.
Okay.
All right.
So back to item A, negative declaration on 1440 North Main Street. Could Ms. Kabala give us the review of the item?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It is such a pleasure to see you all in person this evening, and it would be my pleasure to provide a staff report. As introduced, our first public hearing this evening is for the consideration of a negative declaration for a conditional use permit at 1440 North Main Street. The conditional use permit is for the consideration of the conversion of a approximately 12,000 square foot metal structure that is located on an existing property that is zoned commercial highway. That's the former Ford dealership. The applicant wishes to convert it to a veterinary hospital. The veterinary use requires a conditional use permit, as veterinary uses are not enumerated in our zoning code. And a negative declaration was prepared for this application pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The initial study on draft negative declaration for this project was provided to the California State Clearinghouse on March 23rd, noticed in the Inyo Register on March 24th, and also posted at the Inyo County Clerk's Office. There was a 30-day public comment period, which closed on April 21st, 2022. And during that public comment period, no comments were received with regards to concerns on the project. Pursuant to SB 52, which is Native American consultation requirement, notices were sent to the Bishop Paiute tribe, the Big Pine Paiute tribe, and the Cabazon Band of Mission Indians, and no comments or requests for consultation were received by the city either. The initial study determined that the project would not cause any significant effects on the environment, though staff did include some standard environmental mitigations as conditions of approval for the project. Specifically, the project proposes to remove 9 non-native Arizona cypress from the property. And so the applicant will comply with all nesting bird surveys that might be required. Any cultural resources which are not anticipated are uncovered during groundwork activities. Appropriate mitigations are in place. And then finally, the applicant will be required to coordinate with Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District for any necessary building permit, air permits, as well as any permits that might be required for the proposed crematorium facilities. At this time, staff would recommend the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and adopt the negative declaration for the conditional use permit for 1440 North Main Street and direct staff to prepare and submit a notice of determination to the county clerk. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
I think there's one quick typo for the, that needs to, just the staff report. Page 1, environmental review, just the word not would need to be added to the fourth from bottom line. Initial study determined the project would not. Thank you. Are there any quick comments or questions regarding the presentation or any other?
I have a quick general question, more from my own understanding. What is it about this application that requires a environmental review and negative declaration?
So there are, under CEQA, there are different categorical exemptions that can be applied to a project. And typically, many of the applications that come before the Planning Commission can fall within one of those categorical exemptions. It's infill or it's a minor change in the structure. In this instance, given the scope of the proposed project, and in particular the crematorium facility, I couldn't make the findings for any categorical exemption to apply, which is why we conducted the initial study.
Lane, is it also related to the change in use for the zoning?
The change in use in the zoning is what triggers the city's requirement to determine if CEQA is necessary. Anytime we make a discretionary approval of a project, that we have to do that review.
Other questions or quick comments?
Elaine, it's going to be a crematory at the location, but in the map, what would be the capacity for the propane for the crematory?
I do not know the answer to that question. I apologize.
But there's any place in the map show where the tank is going to be, anything like that?
I do not believe there is an underground propane tank on attachment A. If you look at the site plan, that is located adjacent to the crematorium.
And maybe we can get clarification from the applicant after the public hearing portion.
Madam Chair, I do want to have a distinction that the first public hearing is for the environmental consideration, and there will be a subsequent
Okay.
consideration for the use permit as well.
And with that, are there any people who would like to make a comment during the public hearing on the negative declaration on 1440.
Is the
North-
public hearing open?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I'd like to open the public hearing, sorry.
Nobody is raising their hand in the public to speak.
So I will close public comments. And we can open commission discussion on Section A, the negative declaration on 1440 North Main Street. In which case, something like the propane tank would be part of the negative declaration because it's an environmental.
It would be considered in the environmental review, certainly, but I don't think that is any way an unusual use that would qualify for special consideration under hazardous materials.
For my own clarification, when we're considering the negative declaration and, particularly things like air pollution mitigation, when it says that, the proposed project won't violate any air pollution standards or, et cetera, I take that to mean anywhere, measurable within the property, not just in the general vicinity. Is that correct?
I am not an air quality specialist. However, part of the CEQA process is that we both consult with state or agencies that have jurisdiction over that as best practice, but also by sending it to the state clearinghouse, it goes to any state authority that has jurisdiction over our area, including water quality control boards or Caltrans. So in this instance, I did speak with Great Basin and they air quality study was shared with them and they didn't have concerns as specialists in the area. And they also had that secondary opportunity to provide comment or concerns that would be incorporated into this document through the clearinghouse public notice period.
Could I ask if it's known how many days the crematorium might be in operation? And the nature of the biomass? What kind of animals will be entering the crematorium?
I think that it certainly is your privilege to speak to the applicant. I do not have that information. And I don't know that it would have substantial variation on the findings of the negative declaration, but please feel welcome to speak to the applicant.
Oh, could I, ask you? Yes, please. Thank you.
And please state your name.
Ludwig, partners in this project with Nicole Millicy here. And I can address a few of your questions to this point and any other things you might have. First of all, the propane tank's a 500-gallon tank. Similar, there's two existing ones above ground at the site now. We have plans to eventually put it underground just for aesthetics and to just make it look nice, I guess. The biomass is it's smokeless and odorless. The only thing you can see is a vapor, but this has been worked out with Great Basin already, and the manufacturer. It's got to have a certain amount of relief, and the smokestack's so many feet tall, and the air quality standards. Eric, to speak to your question, it really depends on how close the nearest residence is. That's what Great Basin has told me, and fortunately, that site in the city of Bishop limits, there's no further site from a residence in that area. So Great Basin was very happy to see that, because it made it, their parts per trillion or whatever that there is in the air is not anywhere on their radar at all. Ironically, there's a nearby coffee roaster, and I think that and it has kind of an odd odor, and I think that some people might mistake that odor for the crematory, but there is not any. So, and then the byproduct is actually what people are paying for, obviously, and so so it does 300 pounds an hour. really to speak to how many animals and how hours that we're running it, remains to be seen. We've never done this. As a business, we send about 500 animals a year to a third party site now, and I think we will do at least that. If not, it'll be much more affordable than that. So we'll probably increase that. So ideally, that in my mind, we would not do it during peak business hours if we can find the staff. But then again, there's no concern as far as visibility if it is. It would be small animals mostly. I guess there are ways that we don't need to get into, but you can get large animals into these in sequence. So those were was there other questions I can address with that?
I just had a follow-up question. Taylor, presumably the crematorium itself, like even if you were operating it, let's say around the clock, which obviously you're not, presumably that has to meet some EPA standards for emission anyway.
So Luke at Great Basin asked me this last week, and he's going to put a limit on our permit of how much we can do. And based on the restrictions of the machine, it's less than 0.1% of his air pollution limit. So I think he said 60 or 600 tons or something of, and he had a formula which I compared to the 300 pounds an hour. If we ran it around the clock year round, that number would be fractional of his standard. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That was sort of my guess.
Yeah. I mean, some of these, and we don't have any plans for this, but some veterinary hospitals have multi-burners and, and so maybe they could reach that. But anyway, interesting to note too that the City of Bishop and the Great Basin had never done a permit for a crematory ever anywhere. So this was all kind of new findings for them too. So, yeah.
On a related note, I was curious. I mean, your proposed use of this lot is not, out of line with uses of surrounding areas and, whatever that ranch is just up the road, a little ways. But you're as part of this proposal, you're also proposing to rip up a bunch of asphalt and put in like corrals and paddocks and pastures.
Sure.
And I was just curious, do you have any plans to do kind of dust mitigation with those or?
Yeah, just some background on the project. As you're reading it there, it's a master plan. That's the whole two, and we've broken into 2 phases. So phase 1 is what we would start imminently. Phase 2 would be and phase 1 has basically no disturbance of the ground, just be the interior of the existing structure. Fortunately, the back 2/3 or 3/4 of an acre is all just DG or dirt right now. And that's mainly where we would put these corrals and the round pen and things. But there is some asphalt to the north that we would, and to be honest, we would probably cut some drainage and things, but there's likely that we would leave it at least rough and maybe fill over top of it just for horse safety and things too. Sometimes a harder surface underneath with shavings on top or something is easier to clean and that kind of thing. So, but absolutely the dust and actually I've gone through again with Great Basin on some of these particulars as well as if there's a lot of moving of earth, which scraping maybe there doesn't seem to be much digging or excavating, but we would definitely follow the dust mitigations that they require.
Okay, so just the area in the back where you're going to put the corrals and the crematorium, I guess, that's beyond where the asphalt currently is, where all those like Rockstead trucks are stored.
True.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The asphalt ends at that little, they call it the detail shop, which is that little 1,000 square foot garage right there. Yep. Anything else?
While we have Dr. Ludwig up here, are there any more questions regarding the negative declaration aspects of our?
Come back up too.
I had sorry. I had a question about the, so there's this, there's a statement in the negative declaration that because of the tree removal, within 10 days, there'll be a pre-construction survey conducted by a qualified biologist. And so that will happen because of the tree removal, right?
Yeah. In fact, and as it stands, tree removal won't be till phase 2. But similar to the tree removal we didn't do, but that was done for the water line to our existing office. The Fish and Game sends a biologist out to study species and make sure that the nesting bird is not present at that time.
Yeah. I was curious, particularly with this property, because you're half a mile from that big heron rookery, which is like I know of in the area,
Right.
and it's a pretty significant rookery.
Sure.
And obviously that's outside of the 300 or 500 foot, disturbance zone that's mentioned in the negative declaration here. But I assume that we would all want to be cognizant of that and,
Absolutely.
make sure that we're not doing like, massive construction projects in the prime, like nesting season and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah, and I think. Oh, go ahead, Lane. So I mean, it's written here. I think is we intend to follow as it's written. Definitely.
Yeah, I guess my question, if I could really crystallize it into a question, is will there be an opportunity for, despite the fact that, say, this rookery is outside of this, the 500 foot disturbance zone mentioned here, will there be an opportunity for a biologist to assess that and say, oh, you really shouldn't be doing construction between, these months because it might disturb that?
I'll go ahead and take that question. I don't know that that's within the purview of the applicant, but I don't think that it is likewise within the purview of the city to place such a significant requirement to do nesting bird surveys in quite a distance from the construction project. And in fact, the mitigation that is included here as a condition of approval is really going above and beyond what I think is required for this project.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that we place any additional requirements. I was just curious if that would be taken into account in a broader sense by whoever was going to be doing the site survey.
And I might add, there's a rookery in Round Valley as well.
And sorry, also, I was just going to follow that up by saying that, despite the proximity to that rookery, we did just build a giant county building right there. So it's not like we're proposing to do anything unusual here. Yeah.
Thank you for
Sure. I can come
answering
back
those
up if
questions.
there's more.
Thank you. Any discussions among the commission regarding the negative declaration?
Those were most of my concerns. I mean, to me, it seems like it's not an unusual thing that they're proposing to do for that area. It's the use is not going to dramatically change from
And it could revitalize
current use.
that corner without necessarily bringing more traffic, which is
Right, which is another consideration in the negative declaration, I guess. Yeah. No, I thought that, I guess Destin did the initial assessment, but that seemed reasonable to me.
Would anyone like to make a motion on an action on item A?
I would move that we approve the negative declaration
Second.
as written.
Michelle, could we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Gaitis,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bakta,
Yes.
Chairman Liu.
Yes.
Motion approved to adopt the negative declaration for the conditional use permit for 1440 North Main Street, Highway 6, and direct staff to prepare and submit a notice of determination to the county clerk.
Okay, moving on to item B of the public hearing, the conditional use permit of 1440 North Main Street. Ms. Kabala, could you update us with your review of this item?
Good evening again, and thank you very much for the consideration of the environmental review. I think in that discussion, we had fleshed out the description of the proposed use But I will go ahead and provide an overview as it relates to the general plan and the zoning requirements. As described, the applicant is proposing to convert the former Ford dealership, which is zoned commercial highway, to a veterinary hospital. Veterinary hospital is not permitted in the zoning code in this zoning district, but the Planning Commission has the authority to grant a use permit for uses that are deemed not more obnoxious than those that are allowed. As described, the applicant is proposing to build the project in 2 phases. The first would include the main hospital and minimal site work to add the parking stalls. And the second phase would add the equine facilities and the crematorium facilities. In total, the project would include 7 exam rooms, an equine treatment center with surgery facilities, kennels, horse paddocks, 2 pastures, a round pen, a barn, and the crematorium facility. The general plan land use designation for this property is general commercial, and as I've stated, the zoning is commercial highway. This new facility will allow for the veterinary practice to modernize and increase the efficiency and volume of their practice, and will include 24/7 urgent care, specialty medicine, rehabilitation, physical therapy services, cremation services, and equine and large animal medicine and surgery services. The applicant is also proposing to include overnight kennels and medical boarding. The applicant is largely proposing to reuse the existing metal shell with only minor modifications to the building footprint, but also proposing substantial aesthetic improvements to the building. As described in the previous item, there will be very minimal ground disturbance to the paved area and then the non-paved area located on the east of the site. The applicant is also proposing to increase the landscaping on site for stormwater capture and drainage. And there will also be an exercise yard for dogs that will be included as well. The proposed crematory will be located at the furthest rear end of the lot on the east side, over 400 feet away from Highway 6, and as stated in the previous item, more than 1,000 feet away from the nearest residence, which was the threshold of concern. The exhaust stack on the crematory will only rise about 15 feet of the building and is anticipated to have very minimal aesthetic impacts from vantage points surrounding the site. Also, as we described in the previous item, the project is proposing to remove 9 trees. Because the impacts of the environmental review were deemed to be non-significant, not require mitigations, but we are including these conditions of approval to go above and beyond in environmental insurances. And so as described, those include standard nesting bird procedures, as well as coordination with Great Basin for all necessary air permits, which will include air permits for grading activities, groundwork activities, construction, and anything that is deemed appropriate for the crematorium. There's also a standard condition of approval for any groundwork that might uncover unanticipated and unexpected cultural resources. As described in the findings in your staff packet, staff has determined that this proposal is consistent with the general plan. It is not considered more obnoxious than other uses that would be permitted on the site. Moreover, the proposed use is desirable and necessary to the community. Furthermore, the analysis of the site plan meets all the development standards that are identified in the zoning code. And again, includes substantial aesthetic enhancements that will provide a benefit to the community, as well as landscape improvements in excess of what is required by the zoning code. I'm happy to take any further questions on this item, but at this time, staff would recommend the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and approve the request for a conditional use permit to allow for a veterinary hospital to be located at 1440 North Main Street. Thank you.
For any quick clarifying questions before we move to the public hearing? I'd like to open the public hearing on section B, the conditional use permit for 1440 North Main Street. Is there anyone on Zoom or present who would like to comment?
I do not show anyone online waiting to comment.
Okay, I'll close public comment then and open commission discussion on the matter.
Just a quick question, either Nikki or Taylor. What's the timescale for the development? When is phase one starting and ending, and phase two?
So we're waiting on this process and obviously building permits. We have financing in place, and so as soon as we can get permits, we would start demolition and construction, ideally in the next 30 days. Yeah. So the builder has given us I think a pretty lofty time, or well, he says 6 to 8 months. I'm not sure. He doesn't do business in Bishop all that often, but they're a veterinary builder, so in California. So I think that might be a little wishful, but hey, we'll take that. So yeah, and then so phase two would probably be. I've been in communication with Elaine and Destin about ongoing improvements. There's some time constraints that we would have to undertake that, and so we fulfill those. But I could see the second phase being 1 to 2 years thereafter.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you're roughly keeping the existing shell of the building. What changes were you planning on making to the building?
To the existing building. So
Yeah, to the existing.
really no. There's some vestibules that we've shown there on the plans that you have. Just some entry vestibules on the north and south side. Quite honestly, those are depending on there's budgets and there's the banks what they're gonna say as far as lending limits, and so we kind of have right now that's what we intend to do. Those we may just leave those entries just as they are, and if budgets don't allow. But that's really the only other than maybe a covered patio as the building exists right now. There's just a short porch, kind of 2-foot little slant roof, and we're intending to make a patio roof, kind of some better shade and some seating outside for waiting areas. And then, as Elaine mentioned, maybe a little dog exercise yard in the front too. So other than that, the building, we're gonna fill in one of the doors, the roll-up doors, and leave one existing, and cut just one more entry in the rear in the northeast corner there. So no other, everything will be internal. So we're just basically build it with a lid internally to that metal structure. So.
Thank you. With regard to the area for the animals in the back, so you're talking about the pasture, the corral, the paddocks, the ground surface area around that, it still looks like a parking lot. So is it still going to be?
It'd be hard packed just
Okay.
for loading, unloading animals and that.
That's
sort
what
of thing.
I was wondering.
Yep, which is similar to what it is now.
Then the last question is crematorium. You talked about the pipe is 15 foot from the floor of the crematorium. The crematorium, I'm guessing, is ground level. So the pipe is 15 feet above ground level, not just, yeah. I didn't know if you were talking about the crematorium was going to be raised.
It's on maybe a 3-inch base or 4-inch base. So and that's the specs from the manufacturer there in conjunction with our state of California requirements. So there is obligations from the peak of the roof, kind of like a chimney, how close to the nearest peak of the roof, and so where it's positioned allows it to have pretty low clearance, which according to my builder, when he did, had a 40-foot stack over in the Bay Area, which is, I can't even picture that on a single story building. But anyway, that's yeah.
Then the width of the pipe, the exhaust.
Yeah, I believe it's a 4-inch exhaust pipe. Yeah, sure.
Hillary, what's the, you said you're going to be replacing trees at 2-to-1 ratio on the property.
Yes.
I didn't get a sense from the plans where the trees are going to be. Are they going to be
The-
around the property or interspersed?
So most of them to this on the south face, in these little parking lot fingers.
Mhm.
And then also on the, we don't want to obstruct the view because it's just an amazing obstructed view when there's no trucks parked there, which is rare, but
Which is never.
but street between Highway 6 and the building in strategic places to not take the view. So the sunny side, mostly on the sunny sides. Now those the cypress trees that are there currently, that will be the paddock, the horse paddock location. So we probably won't have trees over there just for animal considerations. So
Also for an aesthetically pleasing sign in accordance with the city's new signage ordinance.
we're excited. Yeah, we're about can it be illuminated internally? No, I'm just.
Flashing LEDs changing every 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, we definitely, there will be some signage. Not hasn't been determined yet. There's the pedestal sign is the base is still out there. I suppose we'd probably try to use that in conjunction with the permitting process. Yeah.
I had one more question, but give people an opportunity to. Oh.
Go ahead.
I guess my other question is, I was curious, what's your intention for the existing site?
Our intention is to make it a boarding, so it is currently a boarding facility, pretty antiquated, as you well know. I think there's a pretty significant need and trend to have, the dog hotel kind of thing. And so we've considered that as a phase 3.
So you're going to hang on to that lease?
Yeah. It's worked too hard on that lease to give it up at this point. So yeah.
And we all invested too much in putting that water line in.
I know it. No, I'm not going, that's what Dustin and I talked about. We're not going anywhere on that. In fact, for phase 2, I mean, and it's not ideal, but until phase 2 is built, we're going to have to do equine business probably at the existing site, or most things, especially overnight, because we have stalls there, we have stocks and things, that sort of thing. Just have to make the short commute. So yeah, and that'll remain in long term. So yeah, we don't intend to give that lease up. Those are valuable.
And it's great. Another side business that benefits the community and.
Yeah, I mean, we're as everyone knows, unlimited. My kids were showing me these dog hotels. You can get pet portraits. I mean, I don't put the brakes on things, but I mean, there is a strong consumer need for this kind of stuff. So, we'd like to continue to support the veterinary industry in that way. So,
Any other questions regarding? Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Any concerns as a commission?
I mean, it seems like the primary thing we're being asked to consider is, the usage, which is not automatically covered in this zoning. And the use certainly seems to me not more obnoxious than
And a Ford dealership.
not more obnoxious than an asphalt paved lot with a Ford dealership, and not unusual given the surrounding businesses.
And expanding service industries which is what this community certainly can always use with having everyone almost having a pet. And
Good location for it.
would anyone like to make a motion on item B, the conditional use permit?
We'll move that we approve conditional use permit for.
Second.
Do we need to read it as written, or is that sufficient?
That's sufficient?
Thank you. Michelle, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Gaitis,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bakta,
Yes.
Chairman Liu.
Yes.
Motion approved for the request for a conditional use permit to allow for a veterinary hospital to be located at 1440 North Main Street, Highway 6, as described within the staff report and illustrated in attachment B.
Moving on to item 7, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission will be on May 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Bishop City Council Chambers, 301 West Line Street, Bishop, California. And with that, I would like to close the meeting at 6:52.
Record time.